Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking from the Heart. And I'm glad that you're here today because we're diving into something powerful, something that just might stir your soul in the best way possible. Let's kick things off with a quote from legendary Carl Jung, the man behind the whole concept of shadow work. He said, quote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." End of quote. Just let that sit in for a moment. Shadow work sounds mysterious and maybe even a little intense, but it actually is one of the most healing, soul awakening things that you can do. And here's the kicker: shadow work isn't just for therapists or for those participating in a silent retreat. No, it's for your team meetings, your project deadlines, family dinners, and your own personal growth. It's not just self-help, it really is soul work. And so, what is shadow work anyway? Well, shadow work is all about facing the parts of yourself that you'd rather pretend aren't there. The envy, the ego, the control, the fear, the need to be right, the impatience that we may have, the people pleasing, or "I'm fine, but you're not definitely fine at all." Carl Jung referred to this hidden part of ourselves as shadow, and he believed that healing comes not from ignoring those darker aspects, but from acknowledging them and owning them and loving ourselves through them. Let's take a leap into the shadow of business and at work. Now, you might be thinking, well, how does this apply to business or work? And that's a great question. Let's say you're in a meeting and someone criticizes your idea. Your face gets hot, your stomach begins to flip, and you want to lash out or maybe retreat completely. If that's your shadow giving you a good poke. Instead of reacting impulsively, the shadow work invites you to pause and to ask, why did that hit me so hard? Is it about my comment or something quite deeper? By doing this kind of work, you're not just becoming a better teammate, you're becoming a more conscious person. Here's an example of shadow work concerning a team leader. Lisa was a team leader in a fast-paced sales company, and she was known for her tough love attitude. And one day during a coaching session, someone calls her out for being dismissive. Now, her instinct is to defend herself, but instead, she takes a moment to reflect. Am I dismissive because I'm afraid of appearing too soft? There's the shadow. When she began to open and own it, she didn't become weaker. She became real, and her team, well, they started opening up to her like never before. So, what does the gospel have to say about the shadow? Well, here's something you need to think about. Shadow work is really deeply spiritual. The New Testament reminds us in Matthew 7:3. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your eye? Now, Jesus was all about shadow work. He just didn't use that term. He said, look inward first Heal what's going on inside of you before you start pointing fingers at somebody else. And when we look at ourselves in a healing way, it changes how we present ourselves in every aspect of our lives. Here's another example of how the shadow work shows up in my own personal life. And yes, it did have a big impact on me. You know, I was always the fixer in our family. If someone had a problem, I had a solution, and usually without being asked. My wife gently told me one day, "I don't need you to fix me. I need you to listen to me." Well, that stung. But because of what she said, I didn't double down. I began to look inward. And I began to wonder whether this was something that was making me feel helpless or making me feel vulnerable. And when I acknowledged that, I was able to be present, and our marriage got a whole lot better. Not only that, but I also found that I was able to transfer this shadow experience to my coaching practice. What we learn in one experience can really be applied to another, and we are better off for it. Yes, indeed, shadow work is really soul work. And whether it's your job, your relationships, or your own quiet thoughts, your shadow shows up. But here's the good news. When you do the work of healing, you stop being a prisoner to your reactions. You become more compassionate, more grounded, and more whole. It's not about perfection, it's about integration, bringing all of who you are in the light so you can live with more authenticity, peace, and power. Now, this is one of the reasons why we focus on integrating business, work, and life. At the center of business and work is our soul life. And it is in our soul life where we find our shadows, which we need to bring into our consciousness and begin to heal. Now, before we wrap up, here are 3 things we can do today. 1, we can notice our triggers. When something gets under our skin, perhaps we need to ask, what's really this about? Number 2, we can take ownership of our shadow. Maybe it's control or judgment or insecurity. We need to say that out loud and bring it into the light. And number 3, we need to practice grace. So we need to ask ourselves whether we're doing this in the best interest of others or in the best interest of ourselves. So reflect on what we don't know so that we can bring our shadow to our consciousness and to our healing. Now, if you like what you heard, if this episode resonated with you, hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. And share this podcast with a friend who's on a growth journey too. And hey, next week's episode is going to be a deep dive into something just as soul-shaking as this one. Planting with purpose. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. So, bye for now. We'll see you next time. So long.